Hello, welcome to White Birch Tarot and Astrology. I'm going to do the astrology for the partial lunar eclipse in Pisces, and I think I've pulled some archetype cards and they're really interesting, and I'm going to do them in a separate video because this is going to be too long. But this is for the lunar eclipse that happens. If you're in the US, it's Friday, August 28th. I'm using New York time, even though I'm not in New York. So East Coast, it happens at 12:12 a.m. on the 28th. So if you're east of New York, it's going to be the 27th of August. And we have a lot happening, and I'm not even going to talk about all of it because I've noticed something that, another aspect, but I'm mainly going to talk about this T-square. Here is the moon, which is in Pisces. We're having a partial lunar eclipse, as I said. I think it's visible here where I am. I'm in the Midwest of the U.S., unfortunately. Haha. Not my home. Anyway, you can see it here, and they said maybe even the northern lights. So I don't know. I guess it's based on latitude, so I'm not sure. You can check wherever you are and see if you can see the partial eclipse. But that means the Earth, which is the center of the chart always, is between the moon and the sun. And so it's a full moon, but it will be partially eclipsed. So here is the sun at 4 degrees of Virgo with Mercury at 5 degrees of Virgo. So we have three, three, I can't call them planets, but three objects here. And then they're making a T-square, which is very uncomfortable and yet kind of stimulating, with Uranus and Gemini. 5 degrees, 5 degrees, 4 degrees, so very close. And we also still have Mars squaring Saturn. Saturn is in Aries and Mars is in Cancer. And I'm not going to talk about it tonight, but we also have a positive thing, which is actually perfect. Is it? Yeah. Jupiter's moving this way. So like in the next day or so, we're going to have an exact trine between Saturn and Jupiter. I think I'll do a separate video on that because it's too much, So what does all this mean? Well, buckle your seat. What is it? I can't do a Betty Davis. I'm not good at doing impersonations. I wish I could. When that movie, is it All About Eve, where she says, fasten your seatbelt. It's going to be a bumpy night. So, yeah. So I have written some stuff out because there's just so much going on here. This is a really important eclipse, and I listened to Molly McCord, who's an astrologer on YouTube, and she pointed out that somehow, I forget why, I know, because we're having an eclipse in February of 2027 that also squares Uranus, as this one does. And so she said she thinks this energy is going to last until then. And I'm not surprised because this feels really important. Are you feeling it? I certainly am. So here's the moon in Pisces opposing the sun and Mercury, in Virgo squaring Uranus in Gemini. And I took some notes. So the sun and Mercury here in Virgo, they want to know the details. Okay, they're all about the details. And they have a specific plan in mind, a map. There's like, okay, here's how we're going to get from point A to point B. But the moon, which is in Pisces, which is your emotions, your emotions are on an opposite track. And they want you to be less inclined to have details, and they want you to follow your gut. Okay? So your emotions want to go a completely different way than your mind and your sense of purpose, because the moon is feeling right now like the details are just overwhelming and they're just not working right now. Moon in Pisces is almost like saying, let's just throw the details out the window. Who needs them? And the sun and Mercury are saying, we need to have some control. I said, yeah, you're losing yourself here. Yeah, so that's why they're opposing. We're being pulled in two opposite directions. And both are valid. But the moon's kind of the star of the show. Anyway, I don't know, maybe Uranus is, because it's at the point of the T-square. So Uranus, as I said, is squaring these three objects. And Uranus and Gemini brings in a completely different viewpoint, usually out of the blue, like a sudden realization. And it points to something that you've been overlooking, and that when you see it, can give you a whole new viewpoint, a new perspective. And I'm not saying that it negates the Sun and Mercury in Virgo or the Moon in Pisces energies. I'm not saying that exactly, but it brings a new information that changes your perspective on these. So that's why it's tricky. It's like, I'm in my head here about order and details. Oh, I'm in my gut level feelings here where I'm one with everything and I want to feel connected, and I've got the feels. And then Uranus comes in and says, well, I'm not saying you're all wrong, but let's look at it this way, and tilts the whole picture like a kaleidoscope. And you're like, what? So this can manifest on an internal level, like when you have an aha mental realization about something, or it can manifest in your outer world, and you can have like really surprising or even uncomfortable conversations with people, or both. The conversation you have with someone could trigger something inside you, and you're like, oh my God, I never saw it like that before, or I didn't know they were like this. I didn't know I was like that. Okay, so it can disrupt internal behavior patterns, which would be the moon, or it can disrupt outer plans or situations that you thought were going to work and to which you had committed yourself, because Virgo's all about commitment and dedication and caretaking and details and, the nitty-gritty, the details of life. Pisces is the one, the ocean, the collective unconscious. Yeah, so very different. That's why they're opposite. And don't forget that Virgo also always relates to the part of ourselves that we share with no one. So I always think of it as like the flame that we tend in the temple of our souls that we need to always tend to. So what this tells me is we need to remember that in order to help others, the collective up here, and also Uranus rules the collective consciousness, so we have a lot of collective energy. In order to help others, we have to have something left in ourselves to give. So our first priority always has to be to ourselves, even though Virgo is the caretaker. This is about caretaking ourselves in order that we can be a better vessel for the all, the collective. So ask yourself, where have I been overextending myself to fill others' needs while at the same time neglecting my own? That's big here. So the moon in Pisces wants us to remember that we're part of something larger than our individual self. And it also wants, as I said, to connect us with like our dreams. Pisces it's what we dream of. It's the imagination. And that's not a bad thing. But it can seem contrary to the focused, detailed energy down here of the Sun and Mercury in Virgo. They're not really opposite. You can use them both, but they feel opposite. And Uranus comes in and says, guess what? I have a third eye. I'm the third eye, being, the lightning bolt. And of course, there's always a shadow side. So the shadow side of the Sun and Mercury in Virgo can be being so focused on the details that we can't see the forest for the trees. And the shadow side of the moon in Pisces can bring up the savior aspect, where you feel like you want to save everybody and everything and you overextend yourself. It can also bring out the victim, which is part of the whole, the victim savior, what is it? The victim savior perpetrator. No, I'm missing one. Liz Green added the perpetrator. Hold on. Victim, savior. Yeah, anytime you have a victim, there's a perpetrator. I'm missing one. She turned it into a quaternity. Liz Green, the astrologer. Anyway, it's the victim / savior complex. So you can get caught up in trying to save everyone. Excuse me. I knew that would happen. Or you can kind of fall down on your own hard luck. I wish I could mute this so I could cough. Excuse me. And if I have to do this over, I'm going to be really mad. I've been mad all day. This, I'll talk about this later, but this can make you very irritable. This Uranus and Gemini squaring the moon, and so try not to spend too much energy focusing on how to save others, because we normally can't. And also try not to focus on the things you can't control, which can make you prone to victim mentality. I should have brought some water in, but I didn't. Okay, and Uranus in Gemini can manifest itself in the nervous system. So you can feel anxious, you can feel irritable, or both. But if we pay attention to the signals coming in from our nervous systems right now, it can give us a big clue to where we're leaking energy. So it's kind of like following a wire and looking to see where the sparks come out. That gives you valuable information, even if it tells us that we need to have really uncomfortable conversations with others, or sometimes even with ourselves, about others, or about ourselves, you know. This isn't always the kindest energy, but it's not doing this on purpose to disrupt us. Well, it is, but it's not doing it because it wants to be disruptive. It's doing it because it's trying to reset the course and saying, hey, you know, look at this. This is where you're out of alignment, and this needs to be addressed. Hello, you're not seeing this in the corner. I almost pulled a bunch of shadow cards, but I ended up with archetype cards. But I think one night I'm going to do some shadow cards. And then also the nodes of the moon are involved, because the moon here is at 4 degrees Pisces. The north nodes are at 29 degrees of Aquarius. And remember, they move retrograde, so they've just moved out of Pisces and are moving this way backwards through Aquarius, which means that the south node is at 29 degrees of Leo, which is technically conjunct Sun and Mercury here. So since we have the Sun and Mercury here with the south nodes, it's saying, you know, the south nodes are the behavioral patterns that we're used to, we were comfortable with, but we're kind of being asked to let go of. And since Leo, where the south nodes are, is the inner child, I feel like it's telling us that maybe what used to be true for us, what was true for us before, isn't necessarily true now. And then the north node is in Aquarius here, just moved in from Pisces not long ago. And that's ruled by Uranus, who's kind of the star of the show over here with this T-square. So this energy, which is very progressive and objective, it wants us to move forward. It's saying, you know, the north nodes are saying, okay, we need to be progressive, we need to move, you know, let go of the past with moving out of Pisces energy, but the moon's not having any of that. It's very nostalgic here and very melancholic in Pisces. Anyway, the north nodes are saying, you know, let's move forward. So ultimately, this whole thing is helping us move forward, albeit in an uncomfortable fashion, perhaps. And also this reinforces the notion that what serves us as an individual serves the collective. You can't pour from an empty cup, okay? And also, you know, whenever we have sudden information or sudden change coming in, it's not always easy. So we have to try to remember to be flexible and open-minded at this time. And Virgo isn't always the most flexible of signs, and yet it can be, because it's a mutable sign, as is Pisces. So that's good. Gemini's mutable. Is that true? Yeah. I didn't know mutables square each other. 36. I guess they do. Okay, they do. They're all immutable signs. Well, that should help us stay a little bit flexible and open-minded. So anyway, you might need some grounding practices at this time, because we do have some earth here, though. We have earth, air, water, and then we have this fire fire trine. I'm not going to talk about that tonight. But we have a lot of things in fire, so. But we do have some earth, but you might need to ground. And also with the moon in Pisces like this, especially with an eclipse, pay attention to your dreams. And don't forget that gut feelings, which are going to be very strong at this time, can be every bit as valid as intellectual ideas. And sometimes it's the tension between the two that can bring things to a head, or bring you a conclusion. It's the energy in the middle sometimes, the tension between the opposites. So, which is, as I said, just kind of coming out here, poking out here, and can bring you some brilliant ideas, we hope. Okay, and then I just want to briefly mention, I've talked about this before, that Mars in Cancer is still squaring Saturn in Aries, which is retrograde. And I've already talked about that, but I just want to remind you that Saturn retrograde in Aries is double checking that what we're working toward is realistic and is in our own best interests in Aries here. And Mars in Cancer wants to be the caregiver, which is okay, but just make sure that some of the caregiving is to yourself, okay, and not just to others. So, yeah, I will talk about this. This is a very positive aspect. Whenever you get Saturn and Jupiter together, it's positive, but I think I will stop there because that's just a lot to absorb, and I want to do a reading for the cards. So I'm going to upload this, and then actually I'll probably record the first one, the cards, and then I'll upload this. But it will be out soon. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Please leave me a comment. Let me know how this resonates and how this energy has been making you feel, because it's been very powerful for me. And I appreciate you all. Blessings. Good night.